Okay, everyone, we're going to do a lecture on qualitative methods. Now, I want you to understand there's two types of qualitative methods. The first one is more positivist. That's cause and effect, as we will see with the large N data. We'll see with machine learning. We'll see with more variable-oriented large N studies. Qualitative methods gets your fingers kind of dirty. Like behind me, this is a protest in Colombia. Right. So I go to Colombia, I do analysis of this, protest, and I might ask a more positivist question. Why are people protesting? Right. What are the causes behind this? See, cause and effect. Why is there protest in some countries and not in others? Why is there revolution in some cases, not others? This is very, very important. And then we get into the deep causes like we do with the hunting ground. Why is it that despite being liberal universities, did they cover up years of harassment and assault? Why? This is the why question, right? We're looking for causes. And process tracing can be very helpful. Process tracing is essentially the idea that interactive variables that sometimes do not seem related come together and produce a result. Very interesting phenomena. And we'll see that in Syria. When we watch the video, which is very, very interesting, why has Bashar al-Assad been able to survive? Whereas, and this is where you have variance on the dependent variable, the result, why has he survived, but others haven't? Gaddafi, Mubarak of Egypt, among others. And, there's a lot of reasons here. You'll see with the old guard, Russia supported Bashar al-Assad. Iran started becoming a major player in the Middle East. The middle class started having second thoughts about overthrowing Bashar al-Assad because they saw what happened in Egypt and Libya, which is a total disaster. In Egypt, the the Muslim Brotherhood started to emerge, etc. Very, very interesting questions. So these interacting variables produce a result. You'll see how his mother and the old guard play a role that is of Bashar al-Assad because he wasn't ready to rule. What's interesting about that case is that his brother was supposed to be in charge after the father died, but he actually died in some kind of car accident. They have a lot of money. They start buying Mercedes-Benz, etc., and going crazy. And then things like that happens. And also for qualitative research, like I just said, this is what one might call immersion when we do ethnography. Actually living with people to kind of understanding their meanings and identities. And that gets into the second part of qualitative methods, where it's not just positivist, but understanding the meaning behind things. Some people call political ethnography. The idea that you're not just understanding the people, but the meanings and identity they attach to the world. So by living in Colombia, right, we see this is about decertification of countries for, not for growing coca. The Clinton administration years before you were probably born started this, getting rid of coca, destroying coca plants, etc., against the war on drugs. But for these people, their meaning of the war on drugs is something very, very negative, where they lost their crops, the defoliage and all this stuff that was happening at the time in Colombia. Many, many people lost their farms and they weren't even involved in the coca trade. A lot of indigenous groups in Ecuador, Bolivia, Colombia actually just chew coca leaves. And, in a capitalist market system, they were told after the fall of the Cold War, all these countries, do what the market says, grow what sells. What sells, lamentably, cocaine, and the gringos and Europeans do it. That is people from the United States and Europe. So this is a very, very interesting thing. So qualitative methods, to recap, is very, very important because it can be positivist, which is cause and effect. Case studies, right? That it's more small and case studies. Like you might do a few case studies, like Barrington Moore, a very famous person. I'll put up a supplemental article on that. Came up with the idea that he studied these revolutions, and the thicker the middle class, the thicker the bourgeois, right, or bourgeoisie in a country, the more likely they would be democratic and stable. Whereas in countries where the land-owning elite, the rich, took over, they became fascist, Japan and Germany. Whereas if the peasantry took over, Russia, Cambodia, China, it would be more communist. Whereas in middle of the road, like France and the United States, it would become more democratic. It's a very interesting theory. There's some problems with it and people attack it. But the point is that that's what good qualitative methods does. You know, it could test a theory, or create a theory, etc. And then you look at it, but this is more case oriented. So you might use history, as we're going to see, archival research, immersion, like you see behind me. You actually live in a place. You start, learning about the people. You might use, New York Times, other peer reviews, historical tests. You also might use a conversation. A lot of people love interviews, etc. So that's what makes kind of good qualitative methods. In the more positivist approach, you have independent variables, like in process tracing. That's more positivist because they're all, the reason I'm moving my hand so much, they're so interacting. And then those are called causal independent variables. And then they lead to a dependent variable, like say revolution, which we're going to talk about. Why did one country have a revolution and one not? You look at all these interacting variables, and then you see what were the causes. And then the dependent variable is more the effect. And then you also have what we're going to see, interpretive methods, where it isn't about cause and effect necessarily, but the meaning, identity, etc., that becomes attached to things over time. You can look at the Confederate. We're going to see something on the kissing statue. The Confederate statues. All these statues, they're just entities, but then they develop with meaning. In fact, there is going to be a nice little activity with the January 6th video lecture I filmed in Chicago. The meaning of January 6th, the meaning of, was it an overthrow of the government? Did it make us look weak? Did it make us look stronger? Will this hurt Trump's chance to win, etc.? We're going to find out soon. Very, very interesting, right? And spoiler alert, it's a very important day because it's my birthday, January 6th, and they all came out to the Capitol to, celebrate it. So I hope everyone is enjoying the class. This is not an easy class. There's a lot of extra points. And the goal here is to understand in the end of this course is that social scientists don't want to be journalists. We just don't want to report things. We want methods like what I just said about qualitative methods and different methodological approaches, like I'm talking about immersion. We're going to do quantitative research, interpretive methods, etc. So I hope you're enjoying the class. It is kind of a tough one, kind of understanding what are these methodological approaches and how do we apply them. Very, very important, though, to the social sciences and understanding the world generally speaking. Take care, everyone.